Our blue planet. 71% is covered by ocean. The ocean supports us and connects us. It sustains us, absorbing 1/4 of all carbon emissions, generating over half the world's oxygen, and hosting rich biodiversity. But like much of our natural world, our oceans are in trouble. And yet, less than 1% of our oceans have been fully explored. We have better maps showing the surface of Mars than our own ocean floor. How can we understand and protect an environment we barely know? The Discovery is a UK research ship embarking on its latest mission to explore new areas of the deep ocean. This Discovery expedition is the latest voyage of the Blue Belt programme, which has been supporting the UK overseas territories to protect their marine environment since 2016. So far, the Blue Belt has helped to protect and manage over 4 million square kilometres of ocean around the world, from the Atlantic to the Southern and the Pacific Ocean. Travelling over 9,000 miles, the Discovery will voyage from the UK, south across the Atlantic, to the remote islands of Ascension and St Helena. Their vast marine protected areas host a wide range of unique and endangered species, some of which are found nowhere else in the world. In this latest voyage, the aim is simple: to explore uncharted waters, support local communities, and provide new data for evidence-based marine conservation. The Voyage of Discovery.
So we'll be boarding Discovery in a couple of days and setting sail. Throughout the development of this expedition, we've worked really closely with the overseas territories to develop the key objectives and really define the areas that they want more information from. During the expedition, we'll have colleagues from the overseas territories joining us for them to advise us and share their knowledge of the areas we'll be working in, but for us to share some of our expertise, to collect information, to sustain and develop their management into the future. It would be amazing to discover some new deep sea vents that have not been charted before, maybe find some new species, but I think mainly is to collect the science necessary to develop evidence-informed management that will ensure that these habitats and species are protected into the future.
So Discovery is just under 100 metres long. We can carry a maximum of 54 people. Between us, we can operate 24/7. There's certain challenges with working at sea, breakdowns or emergencies that may occur at any time. You know, it's dealing with alarms. We have to be ready, prepared to be able to deal with that.
So we've just arrived at Ascension Island, which is an amazing milestone for this expedition, where we've got lots of science plans.
So Ascension Island is a small volcanic island right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And the marine protected area is about 445,000 kilometres squared. Within that, we've got some amazing inshore habitat where we get quite a high diversity of fish. And certainly we've actually got 11 species found nowhere else on the world. But then beyond that, we've got this vast ocean where we find things like tuna, marlin, and sharks. Below that, we've got deep sea habitats that can be about 3,000 metres deep. And probably the most exciting further out from the island is our shallow water seamounts.
As I speak, we are heading to one of our seafloor mapping sites. And we have got global maps of the seafloor, which are derived from satellite measurements, the gravitational strength of the Earth's crust. But these maps are very, very coarse in their resolution. What we use is a system called multi-beam bathymetry. So very frequent pulses of sound that are being emitted from the bottom of the ship, and we're timing how long it takes for that to come back. And based on that time and the speed of sound in water, we can estimate what the seafloor topography is like. And at the moment, we're mapping an area about 13 kilometres wide. It's really a fundamental tenet of mapping a habitat is knowing what the actual terrain is like. This morning we found ourselves a brand new seamount. According to the seafloor maps we had from the satellites, there was maybe a gentle hill there, and actually it turns out it's a seamount that's over 1,000 meters high. So this is the level of discovery we're talking about here. We're literally in uncharted waters.
So the seamount is 10 kilometers by 8 kilometers, equivalent to a city like Plymouth. Yes, it's quite fascinating that today we are still discovering seamounts and that we don't know the seabed as we know the surface of the moon.
One of the reasons seamounts are so important is because they drive deep water currents up to the surface. This is cold, nutrient-rich water that means that areas around seamounts are much more productive. A whole range of migratory species flock around these underwater mountains.
Baited remote underwater video systems, or BRUVs for short, are a set of camera systems which allow us to non-invasively monitor pelagic species, such as oceanic sharks and tuna. BRUVs are capable of providing a range of really valuable information, such as the species present in an area, the abundance of those species, as well as an accurate estimation of size. It was really reassuring to see such a healthy population of Galapagos sharks in the Ascension Island EZ, given how significantly shark populations worldwide have declined due to overfishing.
So I guess the obvious question is why we're interested in collecting mud. And it's not so much the mud or the sediment itself that we're interested in, but the information that's locked away inside it, ranging from studies of blue carbon through to microplastics and looking at isotope analysis and food web dynamics.
I'm very lucky at the moment working on the pelagic trawls that we're doing, usually between sort of 1,000 meters and about 200 meters. And we've been getting some absolutely fantastic fishes from the very first trawl, and we got this beauty. This is a wing-fin snaggletooth, and I have never seen one of these before, so it'll be a great addition to our collection. Another one of my favorites is this Sloane's viperfish. And a lot of these fish will have light organs. They don't want to create a dark silhouette, but they also have lights for communicating with each other, and also they have lights for attracting their prey. But what was really interesting, when I shone the UV torch on that, all the photophores lit up bright red, and I have no idea why they do that. And hopefully we can find out what that's all about. I think it's really important to stress that we're not just doing this for fun. This is all for a very, very good reason. We can't say anything about these environments unless we know what lives there. We're going to make it very accessible. We're going to publicize it so that it's there for scientists to use. We have some specimens at the NHM from Captain Cook's voyage in the 1760s. So hopefully these will be around for hundreds of years and people will be able to use them and find out about them and the habitat from which they came.
So on board the ship, I am part of the pelagic team, whereas James is in charge of the fish. I am in charge of working on the cephalopods and the crustaceans. So I spend a lot of my time identifying the shrimp species, and they're quite tricky because, as you might imagine, there's lots of different types of shrimp. However, my favourite part is actually identifying the squid and the other cephalopods that we find, which we really don't know too much about. Squid have 8 arms and 2 tentacles, so 10 limbs. One of the most exciting squid that we found is a Chiroteuthis, and these are quite rare squid, and it's strange because they've got these extra long but very flimsy and fragile tentacles. And they think that the reason why is because they use their tentacles as lures to get any small fishes that might be along the bottom of the sea and then capture them. The deep sea are where the squid flourish. It's one of those areas which we have the possibility to find something new and exciting. We're going into their home, and who knows what we'll find.
As part of the video camera work that we are doing, we have a towed camera that we deploy on the side of the ship and goes down beyond 200 meter depth, and we uncover anything that lives on the seabed. So far, Some of the habitats that we found around Ascension, mainly deep sea coral reefs, deep sea sponge aggregations, has been some of the habitats that we found in the North Atlantic, but yet they haven't been described for the South Atlantic. So we are really pioneering some of the deep sea habitats work where we are collecting new data that has never been collected before.
So this cruise, DY159, is really important to Ascension. We've only got a very small boat, so most of our marine protected area we just don't get out to. We've never really seen it before. So this cruise is so important to us. We're learning things about our marine protected area we didn't know. We're seeing things for the first time. It helps us understand what's out there and what we need to protect and what the threats to it are.
So we've now finished the 9-day expedition within the Ascension Island MPA. We're now off to St Helena to start the St Helena leg of the expedition, so another couple of days.
The facilities are amazing. When I'm not on the bridge and when I'm not doing my other duties and responsibilities, we have a great gym on board.
We've got DVD rooms.
We have regular movie nights.
We've got a bar that we can go and sit and chill in.
We have a library on board.
We've started a little yoga group. Where else better to do yoga in the middle of the ocean?
My intention every day is to make sure people have some comfort, because I'm a bit mummish, make people feel happy and comfortable here.
It's a morale thing on ships there. If it's good food on board, then it's happy people on board. They are surprised when they do see fresh bread rolls and things like that.
When I come on board, the purser gives me a list on birthdays. So I think I had about 13 cakes this trip.
What I try to do is find out what you like, especially the vegetarians. Always ask them, what do you eat at home? And then I put it on the menu.
So we finally arrived at St Helena and we're in Jamestown now. Super excited about getting our colleagues on from St Helena Government and the National Trust.
The marine protected area of St Helena covers over 400,000 kilometres square. We've got a beautiful coastline, seamounts, a whole range of different habitats, and we're quite fortunate to be able to do our part to protect.
The St Helena leg of the expedition will be really interesting because we've never deployed pelagic growth there before, so it'll be really interesting to see what we find. Have to wait and see. We're really curious of what we're going to find in St Helena, and hopefully it will be something that we haven't seen yet.
The first day of St Helena, we went to an area where the satellite maps indicated there might be a seamount, and we found one that was actually much larger than we thought it was going to be as well.
A seamount that was about 3,400 metres high and about 1,500 kilometres squared in its overall footprint. It's just another link in the chain of data that helps you understand what is actually under the sea and how we can mitigate sort of human impacts and manage our resources.
Since we arrived in St Helena Marine Protected Area, we explored different habitats that we didn't really expect. So one of which was a seabed fields. So in comparison to what we have seen in Ascension, we found less coral reef, but more coral diversity. So the fact that we found so many different species of corals is really exciting. It's really important for the characterization of the habitat and to know what we can protect better in the long term.
So one of the biggest threats to the overseas territories waters comes from illegal fishing. From Discovery, we can see about 15 nautical miles, and the marine protected areas go out to 200 nautical miles. And this just gives you an idea of how difficult it is to monitor these areas. So we use a variety of technologies to provide support. One of the things that we use is satellite surveillance to try and detect dark vessels. So that's vessels that have switched off their identifiers.
Around St Helena, it's been really interesting because it's surprisingly different to Ascension. We've had far more variety in our catches. Almost every trawl that we've done, we've come up with a glass octopus. One that's been particularly on my wish list is the jewel squid, and we found one finally around St Helena. They're covered in these symmetrical array, completely covered in these light organs. So when you look at them, they kind of look like they're coated in jewels. So we were able to use a UV torch, and the jewel squid suddenly glowed bright red. Not only a beautiful experience, but it was also really useful for me to identify more clearly and accurately the species that we're looking at. These creatures, they live in a world that we can't even fathom. They explore and use their senses like bioluminescence in ways that we're still learning about. So the research we do in Discovery is really important at increasing the level of knowledge that we have so that we aren't losing anything before we fully find out what's there.
So this is called echogram. It's basically a fish finder like the one used by fishermen, and we use it to look for fish and other pelagic organisms in the water column. So you got the surface here, the seafloor, this thick red line here. These reds close to the bottom are fish schools. So the fishermen have been fishing around the island while we have been doing the fisheries acoustics. So those data will be quite important to validate the acoustic data and to ultimately get an estimate of the biomass.
Using the acoustics, you can working out the aggregations of where the bait fish are. You can also get an idea of where there might be larger predators such as the tuna or sharks. You get a larger ecosystem overview of what's going on.
The Brubs deployment around St Helena went really well. Saw some really cool species. The most interesting finding around St Helena was a really small blue shark, definitely juvenile and potentially only a few months old. Blue sharks are classed as near threatened by the IUCN Red List due to significant declines in their population from historic levels. It's always really heartening to see one.
Okay, so we've just finished our final tour of St Helena, so just going through some of the specimens and also picking out a few of the nicest examples to give to the folks on St Helena. I think my absolute favourite of all the things we've caught, it's this a young football fish. The genus is Hemantolophus, and very, very rare as well. We're still trying to work out exactly what species it is, but the one it is closest to, only 7 of them have ever been found.
My favourite species collected, the giant amphipods. You only see these really giant ones in the deep ocean. The glass amphipod. Yeah, so the glass amphipod was one of my favourites. I was really hoping to get some, and we got quite a few on this, so I'm very glad we got that.
So these are some of the specimens that we're going to put into a display cabinet on St Helena so that they can be used to sort of tell people about what lives in the waters around the islands.
So it's really special that the Natural History Museum has been able to come to the island. It's such an important tool. When people see things visually, it gives a greater sort of understanding, being able to show the kids to capture their imagination, because you never know where that's going to take them in years to come.
So I love the ocean because growing up on a small island, we are always surrounded by it. So it's kind of a part of me. With the conservation, I think that now it's a big part of our world that we have to try and protect it.
So we've now finished DY159. Since arriving, we've been engaged in outreach, so doing school assemblies, and we've also got a public talk this evening in the museum. So the Blue Belt expedition, in my opinion, has been a massive success. The legacy of the expedition will be linked to the data and how the data is worked up and used in the future to further management of species and habitats.
So some of the results from the DY159 cruise will help us to manage our marine protected area much better. So in terms of understanding what's there to start with, how vulnerable it might be to the threats that we face into climate change, pollution, potentially illegal fishing as well. It makes us understand where the key vulnerabilities are. This is important on a global scale.
Blue Belt has catapulted all of those different wildlife areas to a level I think that we didn't even think we were going to be able to achieve. So we're confident now in our fisheries management. We're confident in our ability to manage marine tourism, and we're confident in our ability to be able to manage as many threats that we're aware of.
The overseas territories are some of the most biologically diverse marine areas on the planet. And to actually come out here and be able to see what we're protecting has been fantastic.
You finish your watch at midday and you have no idea what you're going to come back to at night.
I love doing these trips because it's challenging. You meet good people and you get to know them as a family. And when the time comes when they're leaving, it's quite sad to see them go because you actually make friends here.
And it's amazing meeting all the scientists who come on board. They all have their different aims and individual goals that they want to achieve, but under the same umbrella of wanting to better understand and protect our oceans.
The thing I find most kind of exciting about being at sea is getting up and not knowing what we're going to find out by the afternoon. Every camera dive we do, every new area of the seafloor we map, it's always different, and it's always, got some familiar faces and some familiar features, but there's always an unexpected element, and you're always left with more questions than you started with.
They I really enjoyed the most was really the combination of so many different science fields all in one trip. And making those linkages is really important to understand the overall health of our ocean.
After covering over 9,000 miles of ocean, the voyage is finally complete. As the Discovery begins her long journey home, with new samples, specimens, and data to guide vital marine research and protection, the scientists are excited to examine their new findings. Now, the next chapter begins.